Welcome back to Speak Up here on the CW Philly. I'm Natasha Brown. Bill Cawley was only 24 years old when a freak accident left him paralyzed from the chest down. Doctors told him he would never live independently again, but as you can see, that is certainly not the case. Bill is here with us today to share his inspiring story of overcoming the odds and using his experience to motivate other people. So good to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you very much, Natasha.
Thanks for being here. If we can just kind of take you back a little bit to that freak accident that left you paralyzed. Let's talk about that.
You know, it's amazing. It started out like any other day at the Jersey Shore. You know, it's late August. It's a warm, sunny morning, and I can promise you probably the last thing going through my mind was, I wonder if I'll break my neck this morning. You know, I was hanging out with some friends, some guys I'd played lacrosse with at Penn State, and some fraternity brothers, and I said, I'm just going to go jump in the bay. They had a house right on the bay, and so I'm going to go jump in the bay and just kind of wake myself up. I hadn't showered yet or anything, and kind of got to the end of the dock, and there's a railing that goes around the dock, and to get over that railing, I jumped up on a table so I could clear it. My foot caught that railing, sent me over the side of the dock head first, completely out of control, and I just smashed my head on this small slip dock below, instantly breaking my neck. And in the 3 seconds it took to fall, my life changed forever. And this accident has changed every moment I've had for the rest of my life. Yeah,
absolutely. And you said that initially doctors didn't think you would be able to live independently again. What was the prognosis initially?
It takes a couple weeks before you kind of really figure out what's going on. There's a lot of swelling around the spinal cord, and they don't really know exactly what's happening, but it was pretty clear in the beginning that I probably would never walk again, that I was going to be a quadriplegic. But after a couple weeks, it was pretty much solidified that, not only you were quadriplegic, paralyzed from the chest down, because of the severity of my accident and the point of the injury, they said my arms were going to be so weak, I was going to be fitted for an electric wheelchair. My hands were going to be so impaired, they said, you're going to need an aid with you for the rest of your life to help feed you. For example, they said you'll never be able to put on your own shoes or anything like that. I was going to need an aid with it. I would never be able to live independently again.
And now some people would take that kind of that word, that prognosis in a sense, and just be devastated by it. They wouldn't know how to get beyond that. That was not the case with you. What got you through?
A lot of things go into that, and a lot of things happen. But what I realized very quickly, luckily, was that my attitude was going to be absolutely critical. How I looked at what was going on today and how I was going to try and live my life again. My attitude was going to play probably the most important role, and that's really what I focus on and share so much with the audiences I speak to and the people that I coach through my coaching business, that your attitude is just so critical, so important to dealing with any kind of challenge, any kind of adversity you might be dealing with.
Yeah. And so you speak all around the country. Tell me about your speaking engagements and what you do.
I talk a lot about, again, personal adversity, dealing with challenges, as well as professional experience. I've got 15, 16 years in corporate America, so I try and tie in both those experiences, my professional experiences and certainly my personal experiences, and help people see that, we all face challenges. We all have difficulties in our lives. I mean, mine, in a lot of ways, is easier than most people. I mean, my disability is out there for the world to see. And who doesn't want to help a guy in a wheelchair? Really, honestly, and people are very nice and generous that way. But so many other people are dealing with tougher things than I am. I mean, people may be, may have just lost a job, maybe diagnosed with cancer, maybe lost a child, and those are, incredibly difficult things to deal with. So, I don't sit around and try and compare notes, who's dealing with a more difficult situation. That's not what's important. What is important is how are we going to overcome, what kind of attitude can you adopt that's going to allow you to move forward and get on with your life, and that's the most critical part.
What gave you the motivation to do this? Was there someone in your life who inspired you, who kept you going, that motivated you? Was it just you yourself who kept you motivated, or how did this come about?
It was really a combination of things, because, I've learned a lot about motivation since my accident, and that's why I share so much of that kind of message with audiences and people that I coach. It wasn't really a person. The most important person in my life has really been my mom. She's probably the most responsible for who I am today, the kind of person I am. But I was very, very fortunate. I mean, I had hundreds and hundreds of people visiting, calling, sending cards. But what I really learned about motivation was that that's very, very important and critical, and that helped me get over the hump and deal with some of the tough days and the hard moments. But it's got to come from inside. It has to be, as you said, that kind of self-motivation. If you don't have that drive inside yourself, then, all those nice and kind words, they only get you to like the 50-yard line. To get from the 50 to the end zone, you've got to do it. And for me, I wanted my life back. The doctors were saying, you're never going to be able to live independently, and that meant, to me, I wouldn't be able to live the life I expected to live. So that was the big motivation for me, was to get my life back. And, another part of what I learned with the motivation is that really every situation can either motivate you or demotivate you. And it's really how you look at it. I had all my friends coming in, and they're telling me all the great things they're doing with their lives. They're going up to Penn State football games, they're going to weddings. And, you know, I realized I could look at that as, wow, I can't do that, or maybe I'll never be able to do that again, or say, you know what, I want that back. Yeah. They're living the life I'm supposed to be living. I want to do all those things with those people. And so it's really, every situation depends how you look at it. You can let it demotivate you, bring you down, or you can flip the switch and say, I'm going to get my life back. I'm going to go to that next wedding. I'm going to make it up to the end of the season football game if I can't make the early one, and do all the, be with my friends, the people who, you know, mean the most to me.
And is this what sparked your how to live life on your terms? That's your motto, right?
That is, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's what it was. It boiled down to, you know, the doctors in a lot of ways were kind of saying, Bill, you're not going to be able to live the kind of life you expected to, and I just wasn't going to just accept that without at least giving it a shot. Wasn't just going to blindly listen to what they were telling me until I challenged it.
Well, we're going to continue our conversation in just a couple minutes. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Speak Up here on the CW Philly. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Speak Up, everyone. I'm Natasha Brown. We're joined this morning by inspirational speaker Bill Cawley. Bill suffered a freak accident back in '92 that left him paralyzed from the chest down, but he's defied all odds, recently beginning his own consulting firm and speaking to audiences all over the country. What is your message to your audiences? What do you hope to leave them with when you're all done? It
really is going to begin and end with their attitude, and I think having the right kind of attitude is so important, and that's why I stress it so much with the audiences I talk to and people I coach. And there's a lot of different things that go into an attitude, but I think one of the most important things is really what I call forward focus. And that's all about, as you might imagine, looking ahead, not looking back. You know, I always say, you know, if I had never had my accident, my life would be different, but there's no one guaranteeing me it would be better. I mean, people want to look at me and they say, well, you know, if he hadn't gotten hurt, if he wasn't in a wheelchair, his life would have to be better. I don't really know that, and you don't. You know, I might have been driving home from the shore that day, you know, on Sunday, if I hadn't gotten hurt, and driving my Jeep, and truck cut me off, and I might have rolled the Jeep a couple times and been killed. Now, I'm very much an optimist. I'm not a pessimist, but I don't know if that's what the cards held for me. So for me to worry about what could have been or should have been really is a waste of energy. I'd rather focus on what is ahead of me and not worry about what could have been. And I think perspective is incredibly important. I got a great lesson early on after my accident, sitting next to an older gentleman who in the hospital, and he got up out of his wheelchair with a walker and started to walk around the room. And as he sat back down, I looked at him, I said, you know, congratulations, you did great out there. And he says to me, he goes, red, green door. I'm like, okay, looking at him the same way you're looking at me. And he's like, red, green door. I'm like, okay, I understand. And, you know, it took a second, but then it sank in. You know, this guy can walk, but who cares? I mean, he just walked around the room and didn't even realize it, didn't appreciate what he was doing. So I was able, at 24 years old, 2 or 3 months into my accident, to be able to look down at this paralyzed body, my hands are curled up like balls like this, and say, this isn't that bad. This could be worse. And I immediately started to focus on what I did have and what I could do, and not worry about what I might have had or what I was supposed to have. And it was a great lesson to get that early on, and sharing that with people, putting things in perspective for people is really what I try and do so that they can go ahead and move on with their lives.
And what does this do for you personally?
It's a great feeling. I mean, when you get to watch an audience kind of realize and see that they realize that attitude really can make a difference in their lives, and people that I coach, you know, and I get to work with them more one-on-one, and they start to change their attitude and it starts to change what goes on with their lives day to day. It's a great feeling, and it makes you feel good about what you're doing, and that you really, you know, it may sound a little corny, but you're making a difference in people's lives, and it's a good feeling.
And you've had people come up to you, and you have felt that you have touched their life?
You know, people stop you after you speak to them, you know, and you get calls. It's even better when, like, 3 or 4 months down the road, you get a phone call. You know, people after I speak come up to me, and hopefully it has an impact right then and there, but it's even better when you hear 4 or 5 months down the road from someone you spoke to or you've been coaching saying, Bill, things are really changing for my life, and thank you. And it's nice to wake up in the morning knowing you're doing that.
Yeah. Do you think all things happen for a reason?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I don't know that I was fated or destined to, you know, to become a quadriplegic. I don't know if I know that, but I do know that you can, whatever fate is, you can make a difference in it, and you have the ability to impact that and change that.
Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been most inspiring having you here with us.
Thank you, absolutely.
Thank you, and they can get in touch with you, BillCawleyspeaks.com, right?
Yep, BillCawleyspeaks.com, and that's my website, and if they want to talk about anything or share some of their stories, I'd love to chat with them, and if I can be of any help, it'd be great. So thanks for the opportunity to be here. It was really wonderful.
Thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate it. That's going to wrap up this week's edition of Speak Up. For those who want more information on today's topic, visit us online at cwphilly.com, and remember, you can submit show ideas at the website as well. I'm Natasha Brown. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning on Wake Up News starting at 5 a.m. Take care.